What if one question could change the entire direction of your life? One moment, one chance, one line that seems simple, but holds the power to unlock your future or quietly close the door. That question is, tell me about yourself. You've heard it before. Maybe you've even answered it a dozen times. But let's be honest. How many times did you walk away from that moment feeling like you owned it? How many times did you feel like you truly captured who you are, what you're capable of, and why you belong in that seat? Most people don't. And it's not because they're not smart enough, not because they don't have the right experience. It's because they underestimate the weight of the moment. They hear the question and think it's just a warm-up, a formality, a small talk opener before the real questions begin. But it's not. It is the interview. It's the first impression that silently sets the tone for everything that follows. It tells the interviewer not just what you've done, but who you are, how you think, how you carry your story. This is the moment when most people fade. They stumble. They ramble. They talk in circles, not because they don't have a story, but because they don't know how to tell it. And in a world where attention is currency, you have less than 60 seconds to prove you're worth listening to. That question isn't small. It's everything. Here's the truth. Nobody tells you when someone says, tell me about yourself. They're not asking for a list of jobs. They're not looking for a history lesson. They want a window into your mind. They want to see how you see yourself. And more than anything, they want to feel something. That's how people make decisions. Emotion followed by logic. Every employer, every decision maker, every leader, they're human. They remember the people who make them feel inspired, confident, or curious. That's what wins the room. You see, interviews aren't about checking boxes. They're about building belief. And belief begins when you believe in your own story. When you stop waiting for permission to be proud of who you are. When you realize that every step, every struggle, every season you've survived has built something in you worth talking about. But that only happens when you stop treating this question like a test and start treating it like an opportunity. Because that's what it is. It's your chance to speak before you're judged, to define yourself before someone else tries to take the mic and say with clarity and conviction, this is who I am. And this is why I matter. When you walk into that room or log into that call, everything might feel out of your control. You don't know what they're thinking. You don't know how many people they've interviewed. You don't know what's on their list of requirements. But this moment is yours. This is the part you can own with your voice, with your story, with your presence. And if you can master this one answer, not memorize it, but own it, you don't just survive the interview. You stand out. You lead, you become unforgettable. This isn't about being the loudest person in the room. It's about being the most honest, the most clear, the most you. Because when you speak from that place of purpose, not performance, people feel it. And they don't forget it. So don't waste this moment. Don't shrink when it arrives. Don't let self-doubt speak louder than your potential. You've worked too hard. You've come too far. And no matter where you've started from, you carry something valuable. Your perspective, your values, your story. That question, tell me about yourself, isn't just about getting a job. It's about taking your place. It's about proving to yourself that you know who you are and why you belong. Not because someone else says so, but because you say so. And when you finally speak from that place, when your words are rooted in purpose and your voice carries belief, you won't just answer a question. You'll leave a mark. That's the real reward. Not just getting hired, not just making a good impression, but walking away knowing you showed up as your full, honest, powerful self. And that changes everything. But even when you understand the power of that question, most people still fail to answer it well. Not because they lack talent, not because they haven't done enough, but because they haven't taken the time to step back and truly see themselves. Here's what happens. The moment the question is asked, the mind races. Your heart speeds up. You think of 100 different ways to answer, and somehow none of them feel right. You start talking, unsure of where it's going, hoping the words will form into something impressive, but they don't. And the moment slips away. This isn't about nerves. It's about clarity. Most people walk into interviews trying to be what they think the interviewer wants. They wear a mask. They rehearse lines they read online. They memorize phrases that sound professional but feel empty. That's why their answers fall flat. Because deep down, they're not speaking from themselves, they're speaking around themselves. And when you speak without alignment, the energy doesn't connect. You might say the right things. You might check the boxes. But the person on the other side of the table feels it. They don't see the real you. They see a version you think they want. And that version doesn't stand out. It disappears. What's missing isn't knowledge. It's intention. You have to know what you're trying to say about yourself, not just what you're saying. When you answer without purpose, you give them information. But when you answer with intention, you give them something to believe in. This is where psychology plays a crucial role. The human brain craves patterns. It looks for stories. It listens for meaning. When your answer feels scattered, people subconsciously feel lost. But when your answer follows a natural structure, when it flows with clarity and purpose, it creates trust. The mind is wired to connect dots. When you show someone where you've been, where you are, and where you're going, they follow your path. And if that path makes sense, if it's driven by growth and vision, they start to believe in you because you clearly believe in yourself. But to reach that level of clarity, you must get honest. You must stop chasing perfection and start owning your journey. That's the part that's hard. Because owning your story means embracing both the wins and the wounds. It means letting go of the pressure to sound perfect and focusing instead on sounding real. And that's what most people miss. They try to impress. But impressing isn't connection. Connection comes from vulnerability. It comes from strength wrapped in truth. When you speak like someone who's proud, not boastful, not arrogant, but proud, you give others permission to see your value. Think about it. Confidence isn't loud. It's steady. It's the calm knowing that you've done the work, learned from the hard moments, and grown through the process. When you carry that energy into a conversation, people feel it. They don't need to hear every detail of your life. They just need to hear the right parts said with meaning and belief. But fear gets in the way. Fear of saying too much, fear of not saying enough, fear of sounding unqualified. And that fear shows up in the way we speak, in the way we rush, in the way we ramble or hold back. It all stems from the same place, doubt. And here's the truth that cuts through all of it. You don't need to be the most qualified person in the room. You need to be the most aligned, the one who knows exactly who they are, why they're here, and what they bring. Because when you have that, people remember you. It's not about sounding like everyone else. It's about standing in your truth so fully that no one else can sound like you. You don't need to fake anything. You don't need to chase anyone else's path. What you need is to get crystal clear on your own. When you strip away the noise, the expectations, the pressure to impress, what's left is something unshakable, authenticity with direction. And that's what turns a basic interview answer into a powerful moment of connection. The moment they ask, tell me about yourself, is not the moment to be small. It's not the time to question your worth. It's the time to rise into it. This is your voice, your presence, your shot to speak with the kind of clarity that turns heads, shifts energy, and makes people lean in. Because when you speak from a place of grounded purpose, you don't just answer a question, you create a moment. A moment that separates you from the noise, a moment that makes people feel like they're meeting someone who belongs there. And that moment starts with you choosing to show up, not as someone you think you should be, but as the person you truly are at your highest standard. So the next time that question comes, don't panic, don't perform, just pause and begin with belief. You already have what it takes. Now it's time to speak like you know it. Clarity creates confidence, and confidence creates presence. That's the energy that fills a room before you even finish your first sentence. It doesn't come from knowing all the answers. It comes from knowing your answer, the one that comes from your story, your growth, your intention. You don't need to complicate it. You need structure, because when pressure hits, structure holds. Without it, you fall back into doubt, into hesitation, into overthinking. But with a clear structure, your words flow with ease. Your mind stays sharp. Your message hits home. So what's the structure that works every single time? Past, present, future, simple, natural, powerful. Start with your past, not your entire life story, but the part that shaped your path. The moment you chose your direction, the reason you started. This is where you show them your roots, your drive, your origin, the spark that lit the fire. Maybe it was the first job that taught you discipline. Maybe it was a problem you felt called to solve. Maybe it was a challenge that taught you what you were capable of. This part is not about bragging. It's about building a foundation. Then shift into the present, where you are right now, what you've built, what you've learned, how far you've come. This is where your growth becomes visible. You're not the same person you were when you started. You've leveled up. You've faced setbacks. You've adapted. You've earned your current place through effort, learning, and action. Speak from that place, grounded, steady, clear. Finally, move into the future. Not just any future, your vision, where you're going, what you want to contribute, or why this opportunity aligns with your path. This is where you speak to purpose, to intention, to the kind of value you want to bring, not just the tasks you want to complete. When you can connect your future to their mission, you stop being an applicant and start being a solution, a partner, a force they can trust. This structure works because it mirrors the way our minds naturally process stories. It brings order to the chaos. It makes your message stick. But more than that, it makes you feel aligned. You're no longer trying to guess what they want to hear. You're just showing them who you are, what you've done, and where you're going. And that simplicity is powerful. It doesn't matter if you're just starting out or if you've been in your field for years. The structure still works because it's not about status. It's about self-awareness. It's about demonstrating that you think in terms of growth, vision, and contribution, that you're not drifting, you're driving. And that's what makes people listen. You don't need to sound perfect. You need to sound real. Let them hear your motivation. Let them see that you're someone who reflects, who learns, who moves forward with purpose. Because in that energy, they see reliability, they see character, they see someone worth betting on. The reason most people fail this question isn't because they don't have anything to say. It's because they don't take the time to connect the dots. They talk about the past without showing how it led to the present. They talk about the present without any direction for the future. And it all feels disconnected. But you're not here to blend in. You're here to make your story count. And when you speak with this kind of structure, backed by belief, something shifts. You stop being reactive and start being intentional. You stop chasing approval and start leading with identity. You become someone who doesn't just want the job, but someone who belongs in the room. That's what people remember. It's not the fanciest answer. It's the most centered one. The one that comes from someone who knows where they've been, owns where they are, and is committed to where they're going. So the next time you hear, tell me about yourself. Don't shrink. Don't guess. Don't reach for perfect. Reach for clarity. Start with your why. Build with your now. Lead with your vision. And let your answer be more than words. Let it be a reflection of the journey you've walked and the future you're stepping into. Because when you speak from that place, with structure, with heart, with purpose, no one forgets what you said. And more importantly, you don't forget who you are. Clarity gives you the words, but belief gives them weight. You can follow every structure, say all the right things, and still leave the room unnoticed if you don't believe in what you're saying. That's where most people get stuck, not in their skills, not in their resume, but in their mindset. They speak, but they don't own their voice. They show up, but they don't stand in their story. When you answer a question like, tell me about yourself, you're not just listing events. You're revealing how you see yourself. That's the moment when your self-perception either works for you or works against you. Because no matter how polished your words are, the energy underneath them always tells the truth. If you see yourself as average, you speak like someone hoping to be picked. If you see yourself as valuable, you speak like someone who has something to give. And that shift, quiet, internal, but undeniable, makes all the difference. You've got to stop waiting to feel ready. Confidence isn't something you wait for. It's something you build by showing up with courage again and again. Every time you speak your truth, every time you present yourself fully, every time you step forward without shrinking, you're reinforcing your worth to yourself. That's how belief is built. Not from approval, not from outcomes, but from repeated acts of ownership. And ownership means you stop apologizing for your journey. Stop thinking your path needs to look like someone else's to be valid. It doesn't. Maybe your route was messy. Maybe you took the long way. Maybe you started late or started over. That doesn't make your story weaker. It makes it yours. And what people connect with most is truth. Not perfection, not performance, but real lived truth. You're not just another resume. You're not just another interview. You are a human being who has fought for growth, who has learned from failure, who has made choices, taken risks, shown up on hard days, and kept going. That's not ordinary. That's powerful. And that's the energy you bring into your answer. Because the person across from you isn't just evaluating facts. They're picking up on energy. They're asking themselves, can I trust this person? Or will they show up with integrity? Do they believe in their own voice enough to lead others? And those questions are answered not by your job title, but by your presence, your posture, your voice, the way you speak with conviction, not from a place of ego, but from a place of earned identity. You've earned the right to speak with strength. You've earned the right to take up space. Every setback, every challenge, every lesson you've lived through, that was your training ground. And now here you are, not by accident, not by luck, but because you decided to keep showing up. So when you tell your story, tell it like it matters, because it does. This is more than a conversation. This is a declaration of who you are. This is the moment you stop hoping to be seen and start choosing to be seen. And if that feels hard, if that feels vulnerable, that's okay. That means you're doing it right. Because real confidence doesn't come from pretending to be perfect. It comes from standing in your truth and saying, this is me. This is what I've built. This is what I bring. And I'm proud of it. That energy is magnetic. People don't remember you because you said everything flawlessly. They remember how they felt when you spoke. They remember the quiet power behind your words. They remember the way you carried yourself, not with arrogance, but with quiet certainty. You're not here to convince anyone. You're here to reveal who you are. And when you do that with honesty and pride, the right people will see you. The right opportunities will find you. The right doors will open, not because you forced them, but because you showed up with truth, and truth always finds its way in. So speak your story with boldness, not for approval, not for applause, but because it's yours. And when you fully own your story, the world listens differently. The room shifts, the tone changes. You stop being one of many. You become one of one. That's what this moment is for. Not to play small, not to sound like everyone else, but to claim your place, to use your voice, to stand in everything you've earned and speak like someone who finally knows just how powerful they really are. Your story is your power, but only when you choose to stop hiding it. You don't need to wait until you've reached some imaginary milestone to start speaking with authority. You don't need another certification, another title, or another approval to feel worthy of being heard. The truth is, what makes you stand out isn't your achievements, it's your alignment. The deep, unshakable alignment between who you are, what you believe in, and how you show up. When that alignment exists, your words carry weight. Your presence carries purpose. People feel it without needing to be convinced. This is what separates those who leave a mark from those who are quickly forgotten. It's not about saying something new. It's about saying something true. And that truth, when spoken without apology, becomes unforgettable. There's something magnetic about a person who's fully at peace with their path, not because it's been perfect, not because it's been easy, but because they've decided to own every step of it. That's not weakness. That's strength at its purest form. That's someone who can walk into any room and speak, not to impress, but to impact. And the impact doesn't come from volume. It comes from presence. That quiet, steady energy that says, I've lived through it. I've earned this moment. And I'm here to add value, not take space. That's the mindset of someone who gets chosen. That's the energy of someone who becomes undeniable. But to live in that energy, you have to release the need to perform. You have to let go of the version of yourself that's constantly trying to be what others expect. Because every time you do that, you dilute your voice. You step away from your power. You trade your authenticity for approval, and it's never worth it. Your real edge isn't in sounding polished. It's in sounding real. People are tired of masks. They're drawn to honesty, or to clarity, to someone who's done the work to know who they are and shows up like it. When you speak from that place, everything changes. You don't rush your words. You don't over-explain. You don't shrink to fit a mold that was never meant for you. You simply speak, and the room listens. That's what this question, tell me about yourself, is truly about. It's not about history. It's about alignment. It's about whether you can clearly communicate the connection between your past, your present, and your vision for the future. Because people don't invest in your past. They invest in your trajectory. And if you can show them that where you've been has shaped where you're going, they'll start to believe in the direction you're heading, even if you're not there yet, even if it's still unfolding. It's not about being finished. It's about being in motion with purpose. That's what inspires action. That's what makes someone say, we need this person on our team. But you can't fake this. You can't script belief. You have to build it. And that happens in the quiet moments, in the preparation, in the choices you make before the interview ever starts. It happens when you decide that your voice matters, that your path has value, that your presence has power, and that you're not here to be chosen by chance, but because you showed up with intentional clarity. So ask yourself, what do I truly want them to remember about me? Strip away the noise, the jargon, the fluff. Get to the core. What matters to you? What drives you? What have you learned? What are you building? And why does this opportunity matter? Not just for your resume, but for your purpose. When you speak from that place, people listen differently. They see you differently, and you see yourself differently, because the real transformation doesn't happen when someone gives you a job. It happens when you realize you don't need a job offer to validate your worth. You speak like someone who already knows who they are, and the offer simply becomes a reflection of the value you've already owned. So let go of the doubt. Let go of the pressure to perform. Let go of the version of yourself that was waiting for permission to lead. This is your moment to rise, not just as a candidate, but as a force. When you tell them about yourself, do it with presence, with pride, with the full unapologetic energy of someone who refuses to play small, because the world doesn't remember perfect answers. It remembers powerful ones, the kind that come from truth, purpose, and a voice that finally stopped holding back. There's a shift that happens when you stop trying to be impressive and start being intentional. The moment you let go of performance and step into presence, your entire energy changes. You no longer speak just to fill silence. You speak to create impact. You no longer recite experiences. You embody them. And that's the difference between someone hoping to be remembered and someone impossible to forget. You were never meant to blend in. You were never meant to repeat what's already been said. You are here to bring something only you can bring. And when you realize that, everything changes. You begin to approach every opportunity, not with fear, but with clarity. Or not with desperation, but with quiet power. This is what it looks like when you truly own your story. You stop apologizing for where you started. You stop downplaying how far you've come. You stop minimizing what you bring to the table. Because deep down, you finally understand that your path isn't just enough. It's exactly what qualifies you. You don't need to compare your journey to anyone else's. There's no perfect background, no flawless script. What matters is that you've learned, that you've grown, that you've taken your experiences, every win, every failure, every lesson, and turned them into fuel. That's what makes you valuable. That's what sets you apart. The right people don't want perfection. They want resilience. They want hunger. They want someone who's been through the process and still shows up ready to contribute. That's who you are. You're not a highlight reel. You're the result of everything you've worked through and everything you've refused to give up on. So when they ask you to speak, don't just tell them who you are. Show them through your composure, through your intention, through the strength in your tone and the calm in your delivery. Let every word reflect the discipline behind it, the thought, the depth, the purpose. You are not winging it. You are not guessing. You are speaking from alignment with your values, with your direction, with your identity. That's what confidence really is. Not arrogance, not volume, just clarity of self. A grounded sense of this is who I am, this is what I bring, and this is how I'm ready to contribute. It's the kind of energy that doesn't beg for validation. It creates certainty, and certainty is rare. That's why it stands out. In a world full of noise, full of surface-level answers and rehearsed lines, your truth becomes the signal. Your alignment becomes the filter. You attract the right people by being the most honest version of yourself, not the safest one. There's power in showing up without the mask. There's power in refusing to shrink to fit someone else's expectations. There's power in speaking with the full weight of your experiences behind your voice and doing it without hesitation. Because you're not asking to be chosen. You're revealing why you already belong. This is what it means to lead. Not a title, not a role, but a mindset. A decision to show up as the clearest version of who you are and speak from that place, whether it's one person listening or 100. Every time you answer that question, every time you tell someone about yourself, you're writing the first sentence of the story they'll tell about you when you leave the room. Make it a sentence that carries strength. Make it a sentence that says, this person knows where they're going, and I want to be part of that journey. Because people don't just invest in skills, they invest in momentum, in energy, in belief. And if you've done the work to build that belief within yourself, if you've practiced it, owned it, lived it, then that belief becomes contagious. The people on the other side of the table start to feel it. They start to believe it with you. That's when opportunities start to align, not because you forced them, but because you showed up ready for them. This moment, this one question isn't the test, it's the platform. It's the invitation to lead the room before anyone else speaks. It's your chance to create connection, to establish trust, to make people feel something real. Don't waste it with empty phrases. Don't try to be impressive. Don't play it safe. Speak with conviction. Speak with purpose. Speak with the full understanding that your voice has value. Not someday, not if someone else says so, but now. And when you do, something shifts. You stop being just another candidate. You become the one they remember. Belief without action fades. Our confidence without preparation crumbles. And intention without execution remains just a good idea. You've built clarity. You've found your voice. Now it's time to step forward with the presence that turns that voice into impact. Because all the mindset in the world means nothing if you don't use it. You can rehearse your story 1,000 times in your head, but the moment you're asked to speak it aloud, that's where everything real begins. You've done the internal work. Now you lead with it. There's something powerful about someone who doesn't flinch under pressure, not because they're pretending to be fearless, but because they've trained themselves to speak from truth. That's what preparation really is. It's not memorizing lines. It's anchoring your identity so deeply that no matter what the setting, you don't lose your center. You don't need to force energy. You don't need to push your voice higher or faster to sound convincing. Let the calm strength in your tone say it for you. Let the clarity of your message carry the weight. Let the stillness of your confidence speak louder than any performance. This is what people respond to. Consistency between your words and your energy. That's how trust is built. That's how influence begins. When your answer to tell me about yourself reflects who you truly are, there's no fear of being exposed. You've already exposed yourself to the only person who matters. You've faced your doubts. You've cleaned up your story. You've taken ownership of your direction. So when someone asks you to speak, you speak without resistance because nothing inside you is in conflict. This is why so few people stand out. Most are still battling themselves internally. Most are still unsure if their story is worth telling. Most are still hoping they'll be seen instead of deciding to be seen. But you're not here to hope. You're here to declare, not with arrogance, but with certainty. And that certainty is rare. It can't be faked. It can't be borrowed. It comes from doing the deep work most people avoid. You did that. You've earned this. Now deliver it. Start slow. Breathe. Let the first sentence carry presence, not pressure. You don't need to come out swinging. You need to come out clear. You're not filling space. You're creating meaning. Your words are not just sound, they are signal. A message that says, I'm here, I'm ready, and I know what I bring. You're not waiting to feel confident. You're stepping into it. And if your hands shake, if your voice catches, let it. That's not weakness, it's realness. It means you care. It means this matters. It means you're alive in this moment instead of hiding from it. But don't run from it. Ground yourself in what you know. Return to your truth. Let your preparation carry you when your nerves try to take over. Let your purpose speak louder than your fear. Because this moment isn't a test. It's a reflection. It mirrors everything you've practiced, everything you've built. Every moment you chose growth over comfort, you've earned the right to speak with power. You've earned the right to own your seat at the table. Not someday, not eventually, now. When your answer lands, they'll feel it. Not just because of what you said, but because of how you said it. Because of the integrity behind your words, because of the depth behind your eyes, because you didn't show up to perform, you showed up to connect. And that's the kind of energy that opens doors. That's the kind of presence that shifts outcomes. That's the kind of voice that gets remembered long after the conversation ends. So the next time you're asked, tell me about yourself, don't reach for the polished answer. Reach for the true one, the one that reflects your journey, your growth, your purpose. The one that speaks not just to where you've been, but to the impact you're ready to create. Because you're not just introducing yourself, you're making a statement. And the world listens differently when someone speaks like they finally remember who they are.